Hi. In this video, we're going to be talking about repurchase agreements, or as they're more commonly known as repos. Repos are used for a lot of different things. Okay, we're going to be looking at it in the context of how bond dealers finance their positions, but they're also used they're used by the Federal Reserve in terms of how they will be increasing or decreasing the money supply, and they're also used with short sales. Okay, any kind of a short sale that repos are used in that process. But we're going to look at it specifically in terms of the way that bond dealers will finance their positions. Now, if you think about it, a bond dealer has to have lots and lots and lots of bonds available for sale because that's what they do. They buy and they sell bonds, and that's how they make their money, is they buy low and then they sell high. So in order to be able to sell bonds to anybody who wants, they have to be able to have a lot of bonds available. So that, because these bonds are not like $100 bonds or $1,000 bonds, these are oftentimes $1 million bonds that they are buying and selling. They have to have a very large inventory. So they have to have a way of being able to finance this inventory, and repos are typically the way that they do this. Now, a few terms to make sure we're on the right page to begin with. A repurchase agreement, or a repo, and actually sometimes they're even called RPs, are where you are going to sell a bond and then repurchase it. So what you're doing is when you sell it, you are simultaneously entering into a forward contract, entering into an agreement to be repurchasing that bond at a later date. Okay. And the example that we're going to be going through, that later date is the next day. Okay. So that's what's called an overnight repo. So you sell the bond today with an agreement that you're going to be repurchasing it the very next day. A reverse repo is where the initiating party in the repurchase agreement wants to obtain collateral. In other words, what they're looking to do is they're looking to be buying a bond and then reselling it. So a repo is where you sell the bond and repurchase it. A reverse repo is where you're first going to be buying the bond and then you're going to be reselling it. So there's one party is doing each in a repo. Okay, one party is selling and then repurchasing it. The other party is buying and then reselling it. But whoever initiates the transaction is what gives it the name, okay, of either repo or reverse repo. Now, sometimes, specifically with the reverse repos, there is desire by one party to obtain a certain collateral, okay? They want a specific bond. That's what's called a special repo, okay, when you want a specific bond, or general would be any type of collateral will do. We're not going to, I think you'll see that, how that works as we go through the example, but we're really not going to be focusing on that so much. Okay, so let's go through an example. And there's a couple other terms that we need to understand as well, but I think they're better understood when we go through the example that we've got here. If we take a look at our class notes first, okay, on this, we're going to see where the example is. So let me bring that up. So that's going to start right up here, okay? Now, these are the dates that we've got on here. And you see there's a lot of numbers and stuff on here. We're going to go through it visually first without the numbers. And then we're going to, I think we'll understand a little bit better. Then we'll come back and go through the numbers that we have here. So what I've done is I have drawn a diagram of how this particular repo is going to work that we're going to go through here. Okay, so let me bring that up. And so here is my first diagram. Okay, the bond dealer is going to be initiating the repo. And the reason why the bond dealer is going to be initiating the repo is because the bond dealer is going to be buying a bond from customer number one. Okay, so this arrow that you see there is the path of the bond. The bond dealer is going to be buying a bond from customer number one, and the way the bond dealer is going to be financing that, in other words, the way the bond dealer gets the money to be able to pay customer number one, okay, for this, is through the repurchase agreement that he enters into with a money market fund. Okay, most of you should be familiar with money market funds. Money market funds will invest in very short-term very liquid, very safe instruments. And repurchase agreements are one of the primary instruments that money market funds will invest in. Now, the money market fund in this case is going to be the repo dealer, okay, because that's who the bond dealer is dealing with. It doesn't have to be a money market fund. It can be another bond dealer. It could be any kind of corporation that wants to be able to make a short-term loan. But the idea here is, from the money market fund's standpoint, what they are doing is they are going to be lending money to the bond dealer for a short period of time. In our example, it's going to be overnight, and they're going to be holding this bond as collateral during that period of time. So what happens is the bond itself is going to go from the bond dealer to the money market fund. Okay, the money market fund is going to be holding it, and then the money market fund is going to be selling it back. That's the repurchase by the bond dealer, selling it back to the bond dealer the next day. The bond dealer then is going to be selling the bond to customer number two. Now, the way the bond dealer makes money first and foremost is by buying and selling bonds. So the customer buys the bond from customer number one, and then is going to be selling it the next day to customer number two in that case. Okay, so the bond dealer is going to be buying and selling, and that's how the bond dealer makes money. They buy at the bid and they sell at the ask. The ask is higher than the bid, so the bond dealer is going to be making money on that. But they need to be able to have some money in the meantime to be able to pay customer number one, okay, before they get the money from customer number two, and that's done through this repurchase agreement. So the repurchase agreement is happening right here between the bond dealer and the money market fund, okay? But the reason why the bond dealer needs to do this is so that they have money to be able to buy, they have financing to be able to buy this bond from customer number one and to be able to then resell it to customer number two. Okay, so that is the path of the bond with our parties to the repo. Now let's take a look at not only the path of the bond, but let's take a look at the path of the money as well. So we said the bond dealer is going to be buying the bond from customer number one. What does the bond dealer give to customer number one? Money, of course. It's going to be giving customer number one the bid price on the bond. The bond dealer has posted a bid price on this bond, so it's going to be paying the bond the bid price. The bid price is the clean price, but what the bond dealer is paying the customer number one is the bid plus accrued interest, which is going to be the invoice price. As you know, you have to add on accrued interest to the quoted price for a bond, because typically bonds are not only bought and sold at the date of a coupon payment. If it's in between coupon payments, then you have to have the accrued interest added in there as well. So the bond dealer is sending over to customer number one this bid plus accrued interest. Now, this could be millions of dollars, okay? Where does the bond dealer come up with that money? Well, simultaneously with buying the bond from customer number one, the bond dealer is going to be selling the bond to the money market fund, selling it through a repurchase agreement, where they're going to be selling it with an agreement to repurchase it. And in our example we're going to look at right now, let's just say it's the very next day. So the bond dealer sends the bond over to the money market fund, sells the bond to the money market fund. Now, the money market fund, from their standpoint, they're not really looking at this as they're buying the bond. Okay, technically they are, but they're not looking at it that way. They are looking at it as that they are giving the bond dealer a loan, and they are holding the bond as collateral on that loan. Now, the amount of money the money market fund is loaning to the bond dealer is going to be less than the value of the bond. Okay. Whenever you make a loan, you want the collateral to have more value than the amount of loan that you are lending out. Okay, typically that's done with all loans. Okay, so the collateral needs to be worth more, so that if the bond dealer, for example, defaults, okay, and the bond dealer does not repay this loan, then the money market fund has a bond that is worth more than this, which they can sell on the open market and recover any losses, and in fact probably make a little bit of a profit on it. So how much money does the money market fund lend to the bond dealer? Well, the value of the bond has been established right up here when the bond dealer bought the bond from customer number one for the invoice price, the bid plus the accrued interest. So you notice I've got that in parentheses here. So that amount of money is the value of the bond. What the bond dealer, what the money market fund is going to lend to the bond dealer is that amount of money minus a haircut. A haircut is not something where you go to the barber, okay, but it is a subtraction, okay, from the value of the bond. It is typically about 50 basis points, okay, and in the example we're going to use, it's going to be 50 basis points. It could be a little bit more than that, could be a little bit less than that. It depends on what the bond is. It depends upon the relationship between the money market fund and the bond dealer, how comfortable the money market fund feels lending to the bond dealer, okay? And again, this money market fund doesn't have to be a money market fund. It can be anybody who's willing to lend money to the bond dealer. But in our example, we're making it a money market fund. So in the brackets here, what I've got is the amount of money that is lent to the bond dealer. Okay, from the standpoint of the money market fund, they're loaning this money to the bond dealer, and they're receiving a bond as collateral. From the bond dealer standpoint, they are selling the bond to the money market fund, and they are receiving this amount of money. Now, the amount of money that the bond dealer receives, if the haircut is 50 basis points, 0.5%, the amount of money the bond dealer is receiving from the money market fund is 99.5% of the value of the bond. So when the bond dealer is buying this bond from customer number one, remember I said that's really simultaneous with doing this first leg of the repo here. The bond dealer has got 99.5% of the money that he needs to send over to customer number one. The other 0.5%'s got to come out of his pocket. Okay, so it's got to cost the bond dealer a little bit of something to be able to buy this bond. So the bond dealer buys the bond from customer number one, obtains 99.5% of the funds from entering into the repurchase agreement with the money market fund, where the bond dealer sends over the bond to the money market fund. The money market fund sends over to the bond dealer the value of the bond minus the haircut. And again, the purpose of the haircut is to protect the money market fund so that if the bond goes down in value a little bit while the money market fund is is owning it, and the bond dealer reneges on his agreement to repurchase the bond, then the money market fund will still have a bond that has more value than what was lent over. So this haircut is just a little bit of a percentage, okay, of the value of the bond. So the money market fund is lending less than the value of the bond. Okay, so the money market fund has now got this bond. The next day, the bond dealer completes the repurchase agreement. In other words, he repurchases it from the money market fund. So the money market fund is going to send the collateral back over to the bond dealer. Okay, the bond dealer is repurchasing the bond. Remember, from the bond dealer's point of view, they're selling the bond and repurchasing it, and legally, technically, that's what's happening. But from the money market fund's standpoint, it is a collateralized loan where the money market fund was holding the bond as collateral. The money market fund sends back over the collateral because the bond dealer is sending over to the money market fund the amount of money that he borrowed. Now notice over here, the amount that was borrowed was in brackets. So there it is up there. That's the amount of money that the money market, that the bond dealer is borrowing from the money market fund. But the bond dealer, of course, has to send over some interest as well. How much interest is that? That's going to be based upon the repo rate. The repo rate is going to be a rate that is published by the money market fund that says, hey, anybody who wants to borrow money from us, okay, we will lend it, And this is the interest rate that we are charging on it. Now, like all rates, it's an annualized rate is what they're quoting, but typically this is an overnight rate, means it's done for one day, which means it's going to be that annual rate divided by 360. Why dividing by 360 instead of dividing by 365? Well, because it is a money market instrument, and money market instruments, just because it's always been done this way, because the math is a little bit easier, we base it upon 360 days in a year. So in the example that we're going to be using, we're going to say that the repo rate is 2%. So 2% divided by 360 is going to be the daily rate that is in there. We're going to put a little twist on that when we get to it. It's going to be for 3 days rather than for one day. But the point being is that the money market fund is going to be receiving some interest. Okay, if this was an overnight repo, this is 1 day's worth of interest. Now, the money market fund is not out to try to make the highest interest rate possible. Okay, what money market funds typically do is they ensure that if you lend money to, if you as a retail customer, okay, you want to park some money in a money market fund, you park $100,000 there. Your primary concern is that the $100,000 is still going to be there, okay, a month later or 2 months later or whenever. You're going to earn a little bit of interest, and you want to earn some interest, but you're not primarily looking to get a great rate of return. So money market funds are looking for security first and above all things, and earning some interest is secondary to that. So the money market fund has a bond that they're holding as collateral. That's where the security is. They're going to be receiving some interest from the bond dealer, but it's generally not at a really high interest rate. So the bond dealer sends over to the money market fund the amount of money the bond dealer borrowed right here, which was this right there, the amount that he borrowed plus interest for the period of time. In our example we're doing right now, that 1 day period of time. So now the bond dealers got back the bond, okay, and the money market fund is fine. They lent out some money and they got it back with interest. And what's the bond dealer going to do with that bond? Well, bond dealers, what they do with bonds is they sell bonds. They buy bonds and then they mark them up and they turn around and sell them. So the bond dealer now is going to be selling this bond to customer number 2, okay, assuming the bond dealer has got a customer who wants to buy the bond. So the bond goes over to customer number 2. And what does customer number 2 give the bond dealer? Of course, the customer number 2 has to give the bond dealer the ask price, which is going to be the clean price, plus accrued interest. So the ask plus accrued interest is going to be the invoice price. Now, a couple things I want you to note here. We're going to see this on the next example we go through when we start to throw some numbers in there, is that this accrued interest right here, okay, is not going to be the same as this accrued interest right there. And the reason why not is because the bond dealer is buying this bond from customer number 1 on 1 day and is selling it to customer number 2 on a different day. So if this is further down the timeline in terms of the number of days, that's going to make this accrued interest greater than this accrued interest. Second thing is that this bond is not simultaneously being bought by the bond dealer and sold to customer number 2. Okay, the bond dealer does not buy the bond from customer number 1 and immediately sell it to customer number 2. If he did, there wouldn't be any need for a repurchase agreement here, by the way. So because they're not being done simultaneously, this bid and this ask are going to be at 2 different points in time. Okay, now for our example, and this is pretty realistic, we're going to assume that the spread between the bid and the ask price stays constant. Okay, so you got your bid price here and your ask price right there. So the spread is the distance between them, and we're going to say that remains constant. But as you know, that interest rates go up, then the value of the bond goes down. So we're going to say if interest rates go up, the value of the bond goes down. If the value of the bond goes down, in fact, if the value of the bond goes down for any reason, both the bid and the ask are going to go down by the same amount. If the value of the bond goes up, both the bid and the ask are going up by the same amount. So bid and ask will go up and down from 1 day to the next. In fact, even within a day, okay? prices of bonds will change. So it's certainly possible, okay, for this bid, okay, to be higher than this ask. Now, you normally say, wait a second, ask is supposed to be greater than the bid. At a point in time, that is correct, okay? So here's the bid, here's the ask. But let's suppose over time, okay, they both go down. If they both go down, now it's possible that the ask price at a later date will be lower than what the bid price was on the earlier date. Okay, so you can have here's the bid, here's the ask. They can both go down. Also, they can both go up in value. So they're kind of moving in tandem with each other because the spread remains constant, but they move because when the bond dealer buys the bond from customer number one, it's going to be a day, 2, 3 days, whatever later when the bond dealer sells this bond to customer number two, and both and bids and asks will change over time. Okay, so this was adding a little bit of a layer of complexity to it when we said here's the path that the money is going and not just where the bond is going. Now we're going to add the rest of it in there, where we're going to take a look at the example that I've got in mind here that I want to share with you. It's in your notes, and where the we're going to be adding the exact money in as well, and that's going to be right over here. Okay, so let's take a look at a timeline first. Okay, the timeline is such that the bond dealer is going to be buying this bond on June the 10th of 2008, right there, okay? That's when the bond dealer is going to be buying the bond on June 10th of 2008. So you see it says buy right there. The bond dealer is going to be selling the bond 3 days later on June 13th of 2008. We say the bond dealer is buying the bond, buying it from customer number one. 3 days later, the bond dealer is going to be selling the bond to customer number two. So during those 3 days, the bond dealer is financing his position through a repurchase agreement with the money market fund. Okay. Now, this is going to be what we call a 3-day repo. Money market funds will say, or any type of a repo dealer will say, here is my overnight repo rate. Here's my 2-day repo rate. Here's my 3-day repo rate, my 4-day repo rate. So it's kind of like a certificate of deposit at a bank. If you want to deposit money at the bank for 6 months or 1 year or 2 years, they're different rates that they're being advertised. Okay, same thing here, but these are for much shorter periods of time. You can also have what's called an open-end repo. An open-end repo says that the bond dealer is going to be selling the bond to the money market fund, and he will be repurchasing it, but we don't know when, okay? Either party can close out the open-end repo. In other words, if the bond, anytime the bond dealer wants to repurchase the bond from the money market fund, he can do it in an open-end repo. Okay, and the money market fund will sell it back to him. And anytime the money market fund says, hey, you know, I want to sell it back to you, the bond dealer has to buy it back at that point in time. So in our example here, we're talking about a 3-day repo. So between June 10th and June 13th, okay, the money market fund is going to be owning this bond, or from the money market fund standpoint, the money market fund will have lent out some money to the bond dealer for those 3 days and will be holding the bond as collateral. And then on June 13th, the bond dealer will be selling the bond back to customer number two. So let's work through the numbers on this, okay? So on June 10th, okay, is when the bond dealer is going to be buying the bond. Now, this particular bond makes its coupon payments on March the 15th, and then again on September 15th. And the coupon payments are going to be 2.5, okay? So we're basing everything upon a face value of 100, okay? So it's going to be 2.5 is going to be a coupon payment here on March 15th, and 2.5 is going to be the coupon payment there on September 15th. So on June 10th, when the bond dealer buys the bond dealer is going to be paying the bond, it's going to be paying customer number one, the bid price. The bid price is 102.7, okay, 102.70. Plus, the bond dealer has to pay accrued interest. The accrued interest is going to be 1.18. That represents how many days in here as a portion of this 6-month period, okay, that customer number one held the bond. Customer number one held the bond from March the 15th through June the 10th. So customer number one is entitled to receive that portion of this next coupon payment as accrued interest. Okay. So if you do the math on that, and we learned how to do that earlier, if you do the math on that, then the accrued interest that has to be paid by the bond dealer on June 10th is going to be 1.18. So there is the quoted price, or the clean price. There is the accrued interest. So that's going to be the invoice price, 103.88. So the bond dealer sends over to customer number one, 103.88. And that is now established as the value of the bond, 103.88. So that when the bond dealer enters into this agreement with the money market fund, which is really kind of simultaneous with this purchasing of the bond from customer number one, the bond dealer is going to send the bond over to the money market fund, and the money market fund is going to send over to the bond dealer the value of the bond, 103.88 minus a haircut. Okay. The haircut, again, just means that what the money market fund sends to the bond dealer is less than the value of the bond. Okay. What he sends over to the bond dealer is going to be about 50 basis points less, or like 0.5% less. So that's going to be 0.52. So the value of the bond established right up here was 103.88. What the money market fund sends over to the bond dealer is 103.88 minus 0.52, which is 103.36. So that's how much money the money market fund views themselves as lending to the bond dealer. So the money market fund says, hey, I'm lending you 103.36, but I'm obtaining some collateral that's worth 103.88. So I've got collateral that has a greater value than what I lent. Okay, so the money market fund feels comfortable with that. The bond dealer says, hey, I got to pay customer number one 103.88. I'm borrowing 103.36 to do that. So I've got 99.5% of the money to be able to pay. The other 0.5% will have to come out of my pocket. So that's what happens. Okay. Now we've got 3 days go by, because this is a 3-day repo. The money market fund and the bond dealer entered into a 3-day repurchase agreement. So 3 days later, on June the 13th, the bond dealer will repurchase the bond from the money market fund. So the money market fund has to send the bond back over to the bond dealer because the bond dealer is repurchasing it. And the bond dealer has to send over to the money market fund the amount of money that the bond dealer borrowed. How much money did the bond dealer borrow? 103.36. That was right there. That's how much money the bond dealer borrowed from the money market fund. So the bond dealer has to send over the amount that he borrowed plus interest. Now, the amount of interest that is paid is going to be the repo rate, okay? In this case, the 3-day repo rate. And remember, that is always quoted as an annual rate, but because repurchase agreements are a money market fund, that's going to be divided by 360. So we're going to get, that was 2%, okay, was what the rate was. So 2% divided by 360 is what it's going to be. That's going to be for day one. Same thing for day two. Same thing for day three. That interest compounds over the 3 days. The bond dealer does not send over interest each day to the money market fund. At the end of the 3 days, the bond dealer will be sending over to the money market fund the amount of money that was borrowed plus 3 days compounded of the interest. Okay, the math is shown on the class notes, and it ends up being 0.02. That is the amount of interest that is paid. So the money market fund is getting back what it lent out, 103.36, plus interest of 0.02. And if the bond dealer had displayed any shenanigans along the way, okay, and said, maybe we won't pay you back this money we borrowed, the money market fund would say, fine, I've got a bond that's worth more than what I lent to you. I'll just sell the bond on the open market. And the money market fund technically, legally owns the bond during that period of time, but everything went smoothly. Okay, so the bond dealer sent the money back over to the money market fund plus interest. The bond dealer received the bond. Why was the bond dealer interested in getting the bond back? Because the bond dealer had another customer who wants to buy the bond. In fact, that's where the bond dealer gets this most of this money to send back over to the money market fund, is by the money that the bond dealer is getting from selling the bond to customer number two. So here we are on June 13th. Okay. Now that's 3 days after June 10th. Remember, the bond dealer bought this bond on June 10th and from customer number one and is selling it to customer number two on June 13th. Over 3 days, a lot can happen. Interest rates can change, values of bonds can change. And in fact, over these 3 days, the value of this bond has gone down. Okay. So now the ask price on this bond, okay, is 102.65. Now, we don't know what the bid price is on June 13th. I didn't give it in this particular example, but we know it's lower than 102.65. Okay. We also didn't know what the ask price was on June the 10th over here, but we know it was higher than 102.7. So what's happened is your ask is here, your bid is here. They've gone down in value, both of them. Okay. So the bond dealer is going to be selling this bond to customer number two at what is the ask price on June 13th, 102.65. That's the clean price, plus accrued interest. Now, the accrued interest on June 13th has to be greater than what was the accrued interest on June 10th, because accrued interest is the interest earned since the last coupon payment, okay, on March the 15th. So the interest earned over this period of time was 1.18. That was up here. So the interest earned over this period of time, 3 days later, this is not drawn to scale, over this time has got to be greater than that. And it is. It's 1.22. So the invoice price, and I don't have these added up here, it's going to be 102.65 plus 1.22. But what I want you to notice is that the bond dealer is going to be receiving more accrued interest than the bond dealer paid. And it has to be, as long as it's on a subsequent day. And in this case, it's 3 days later. So the bond dealer is, and this is a very important point in this whole process, the bond dealer is earning interest over these 3 days on this coupon payment, because the bond dealer owns it over those 3 days. There's no accrued interest going on at all with the money market fund, okay? The money market fund is doing it just like, hey, we're lending you this amount of money. 3 days later, we're getting it back with interest. The accrued interest is working over here. Now, there are 3 ways the bond dealer can make money in this process. And one way the bond dealer can lose money, okay? In some rare situations, there's another way the bond dealer can lose money as well. I'll mention that. But the first way the bond dealer is absolutely guaranteed to make money is on the bid-ask spread. The ask is always higher than the bid. The bond dealer buys at the bid, sells at the ask. Now, it's possible they may both go down, okay, or they might both go up over this period of time, but the bond dealer always buys at the bid and sells at the ask. So the bond dealer is always making money on that spread. Okay, always. Bond dealer cannot lose money on the spread. Okay. Second way the bond dealer almost always makes money is something called the carry. The carry is going to be the difference between the interest rate that the bond is paying and the repo interest rate. What the bond dealer is doing, the bond dealer is earning interest based upon the coupon rate of the bond. This is a 5% coupon rate. So the bond dealer is semi-annually, it's 2.5. So the bond dealer is earning an annual rate of 5% over these 3 days, okay? The bond dealer is getting that coupon payment in the difference between the accrued interest here, okay, and the accrued interest there. So the bond dealer pays out accrued interest of 1.18. The bond dealer receives accrued interest of 1.22. The difference on that is going to be 3 days worth of the coupon payment. Coupon rate is 5%. So the bond dealer is earning 5% over those 3 days. The bond dealer is paying the money market fund the repo rate. The repo rate is 2%, okay, over those 3 days. That's a positive carry. Whenever you can borrow money at one rate so that you can invest it at a higher rate that is positive carry. So as long as the coupon rate here is greater than the repo rate, the bond dealer has positive carry and is going to be making money there. Notice that the interest on the repo right here is 0.02. But how much money is the bond dealer making on this on this difference in the accrued interest rates is going to be the difference between this number and that number, which is 0.04. So the bond dealer is earning 0.04 over these 3 days while he's paying 0.02 in interest. So he's earning 0.04 in interest while paying 0.02 in interest. That's positive carry. Rarely, but once in a while, you will find the repo rate will be higher than the coupon rate. Okay, not very often, but if that does happen, then you've got negative carry, and the bond dealer will be losing money over that period of time. Now, if that's going to happen, the bond dealer knows it in advance. Okay, and the bond dealer will actually probably adjust his bid-ask spread to compensate for the fact. Widen that a little bit to compensate for the fact that he knows he's going to be losing some money on carry. But in our example, we've got positive carry because that's going to be most of the time, just about all the time, that's going to be the case. So bond dealer so far can make money 2 ways, okay? On the bid-ask spread, guaranteed. On positive carry, pretty much all the time, very close to all the time. The bond dealer can also make money if the value of the bond goes up over those 3 days. Remember, the bond dealer is buying the bond on June the 10th, selling it on June 13th, buying it from customer number 1, selling it to customer number 2. If the bond value goes up over those 3 days, bond dealer makes money. There's one way the bond dealer can lose money over those 3 days, and that is if the bond goes down in value over those 3 days. Now, when I talk about a bond going down in value, I mean both the ask and the bid are going down, okay? Think of the value of the bond as being the midpoint of the bid and the ask. So here's the ask, there's the bid. The midpoint is the true value of the bond. So if that true value of the bond is going down, bond dealer is going to lose money. If the true value of the bond over those 3 days is going up, the bond dealer is going to be making money. In this example, the bid and the ask are going down. And you know it is true because here the bid was 102.7. The ask had to be higher than 102.7. 3 days later, the ask is at 102.65. So if the ask has gone down, the bid has gone down, the value of the bond has gone down. So the bond dealer has lost money on the value of the bond going down. So the bond dealer made money on the bid-ask spread because he bought at the bid, sold at the ask. The bond dealer made money on the positive carry because the annual interest rate on this the coupon rate on this bond was 5%, where the repo rate was only 2%. So the bond dealer made money on the positive carry. In this case, the bond dealer lost money because the value of the bond went down between June the 10th, when he bought the bond from customer number 1, and sold the bond on June 13th. And that's the risk of being a bond dealer. Being a bond dealer does not absolutely positively guarantee you'll make money. And bond dealers actually want to, as much as possible, churn these bonds over. As soon as they get them, they want to resell them. They don't want to hold the bonds for a long period of time because it exposes them to risk. Now, if they believe that the value of the bond is going to be going up, then maybe they will be willing to hold it, okay? But unless they have a strong belief the value of the bond is going to be going up and they want to hold it for investment purposes, the way they make their money is as quickly as possible buying and selling bonds. Because they're going to be making money in the bid-ask spread, and if they're financing the position through a repo, they are going to be making money on the positive carry as well. All right, it's a little bit complicated, but this idea of a repurchase agreement extends actually beyond bond dealers and how they finance their positions. We're looking at it, and we're only going to be looking at it from this point of view, but it's important to understand the concept here of how this works and be able to see how all these numbers came into being, and being able to follow it on the timeline as well. This particular bond matures September 15th of 2010. There you've got your face value and you're getting all the coupon payments there. We're just looking at this short period of time here between June 10th, 2008 and June 13th of 2008. So I hope you're able to follow through that. If you had the notes in front of you, that should help to be able to follow through on some of the numbers. And now you're a little bit more well educated on how a repo works.